Moving right along, this video I want to talk about, in the last 3-4 videos I spoke about business, starting a business. This is part of the Wealth series. Welcome back to Mo's channel. February 16th, 2019. Today I want to talk about real estate. I want to talk about real estate from the perspective of development. And let me qualify what I mean by development. For the sake of my conversation, a real estate developer is anyone who buys a property and enhances it. I say that because in a lot of circles, that could be construed as a real estate investor. I look at investment as more of a passive activity than an active activity. I invest in a stock, I don't manage the company. I invest in a limited liability or general partnership, I don't manage the partnership. I invest in a real estate investment trust, I do not manage the properties. Now, real estate offers you two avenues for growth. The first is capital gains, the second is rental income. Capital gains is I might go out there, buy a property for $40,000, put $20,000 into it, that's $60,000 I've spent. Sell that property for $100,000. I made $40,000 profit. That $40,000 is capital gains. Conversely, I might buy that property for $40,000, drop $20,000 into it, $60,000 spent, and rent it out for $1,000 a month. Now, that property is already worth $100,000, so I've already acquired $40,000 in capital gains. I have not realized it. You do not realize capital gains until you undertake that closing transaction. So if I now sell that property for $100,000, then I realize a $40,000 capital gain. But if I hold on to the property, then I have not realized that capital gain and I cannot be taxed on it. Holding on to the property, I now make $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. Take off expenses, mortgage payments, property taxes, maintenance, repairs, and I'll probably walk away with $8,000 a year. Net. Now, there are two other things you want to understand in real estate: equity and interest payments. When you go out and take a $300,000 loan on a property at a 10% interest rate, that means every year you're going to pay $30,000 in interest. So at the end of 10 years, you would have actually paid $600,000 in that property that you bought for $300,000. If you buy that property $300,000 and you put $30,000 down, your equity in that property is $30,000. So your loan value is $270,000. That's what you're paying off. That is what the interest is assessed on, that $270,000. Given that, it makes a lot more sense as a developer To buy a property which has some damage to it or which has potential for enhancements. When I say damage, I'm talking about specifically the plumbing might not be right, the electrical might not be right, you might have some holes in the walls, you might have a little leak in the roof. This is damage you could easily fix without too much cost. Yet, by fixing it, you'll significantly enhance the value of that property. Issues such as a fucked up foundation, mold, water damage, fire damage, stay away from those unless you want to build an entirely new house. Because remediation of those problems might make the investment not worth it. Enhancements. One very good enhancement, a basement. If you find a property that does not have a finished basement, yet most of the properties in that neighborhood have a finished basement, get that property. Because by finishing that basement, you increase the livable square footage and hence the appraised value. Bad cabinets in the kitchen or shitty cabinets in the kitchen. Replace those cabinets, you boost the value. Get a property that might have 4 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Build a second bathroom. You enhance that value. So look for properties. And of course, different communities have different features that enhance values of properties. Look at different properties. Look for properties that have some damage that could be repaired easily. Look for properties that have enhancement opportunities. The reason I say that is, even though you might intend to rent this property out, what that's going to do is you might buy one property for $100,000. It has an unfinished basement, probably got it in auction or foreclosure. It has an unfinished basement. It has a little leak in the roof. There's a few holes in the wall. All of that might cost you no more than $10,000, materials and labor. Now the cost of that property is $110,000. But by doing that, by spending that $10,000, you boost the value of that property to $140,000. Let's assume you put $10,000 down to buy that property. Your equity is $10,000. When you make these enhancements and boost the value of that property by $40,000, guess what? That $40,000 goes into your equity. So now your equity in that property is $50,000. You got $40,000 additional equity off of a $10,000 investment. What does that do for you? With that $40,000 equity, you could go to a bank and get a loan or a line of credit equivalent to that additional $40,000 equity. And you could then use that money for additional investments. Now, what kind of property should you get? Depends on your situation. Let's assume you're married, you have 2 kids, a wife, a family of 4. Tired of living in an apartment. Now you want to buy a house. Well, buy a duplex. you could very likely get a duplex for the same price as a single family home, if not slightly higher, as long as they're about the same square footage. You're going to spend $200,000 in a house for your family. Spend $200,000 in a duplex. Live in one unit, rent the other unit out. The money you get from renting that other unit out will be sufficient to pay for the mortgage for the 2 units, the property taxes, and any maintenance expenses. You get a duplex that's undervalued because of damage and potentials for enhancement, and you drop $10,000 into it, and now that increases the value of that property by $50,000. Well, this property is paying for itself from that rent, from the second unit. That $50,000 equity that you now have, you can now take that, go out there, buy another duplex. Now you have 3 units that you're renting for, let's just say, $1,200 a month. You're now getting $3,600 a month. You invest in that second unit. You go buy a third duplex. Now you have 5 units, bringing you $1,200 a month. Over the course of 2 years, you could have in your ownership 5 to 6 duplexes, bringing you $1,200 a month. That's about $7,000 a month. Take off expenses, about $5,000 a month. $60,000 a year. Plus the enhanced equity that you're accumulating by doing minor repairs on these properties. With that $60,000 a year, you could quit your job or keep working. It doesn't matter. That's extra income that's coming to you. I'd actually recommend, if you make a lot of money and you're pulling in $60,000 a year, get a lower paying job. Because that $60,000 is called pass-through income, and it is taxed at your prevailing tax bracket. So if you're in the 30% tax bracket and you're making $60,000 passive income, 30% is going to Uncle Sam. That's $18,000. If you lower your tax bracket to 15%, then now you're only paying $9,000 as opposed to $18,000. So consider that. Now, I recommend boarded up properties. Those are good vehicles. But once again, if you get a boarded up property, inspect it. Get a home inspector. Pay them $100. They'll inspect it. They'll tell you this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. And they'll probably tell you how much it will cost to remediate that. There's a guy who bought a boarded up property. He paid $1,700. I put in new electrical wiring from the panel all the way to every room. I put in new supply plumbing, new drain plumbing. I built a second bathroom. I put in new walls, everything from the studs to the drywall. I put in tile flooring throughout the house. Put in new lights, new toilet, shower, sink. Materials were less than $3,000, plus my labor. I charged them cheap. I'll never do that again. Plus $1,700 purchase price. That's $5,000. That property is worth at least $80,000. So if you can find boarded up properties that have potential, get those. If you could find an apartment building that maybe has 6 units, a small apartment building, get that. This is how you build revenue streams, by buying different properties. If you want to go into commercial property, get that as well. But understand the environment that you're going into. If you're in California, where houses are expensive like shit, that's a great place to own apartment buildings. If you're in a growing business, a growing city, where there are a lot of businesses coming in, and the commercial vacancy rate is very low, that's a good area to get into commercial properties. If you're in an environment where most people rent houses, that's a good area to buy a house and rent the house out. So do your research. Understand what the market has, what the market needs. Now, I've spoken about existing properties. You could also buy a plot of land and build a house on it. And either sell the house or rent the house. There's a misconception out there, a huge misconception. If I go buy a house, a 2,500 square foot house, and I pay $200,000 for it, I'm assuming that's fair market value. I'm assuming that between the land and the materials that made the house and the labor that went into building that house, it's about maybe $150,000. So the developer probably made $50,000 profit. Nah. I could build a house from the ground up. I could dig the foundation. I could drop the foundation. I could lay the floor sill, drop the floorboard, frame the walls, run the electrical, run the plumbing, run the ceiling joists, frame the second floor, run the rafters, throw on the roof board, hang the doors, windows, all of that. I could do all of that. And I'm here to tell you, the material cost to build a 4, 5, 6,000 square foot house, which in a lot of areas would be considered a mansion, the material cost is no more than $20,000. And I don't care if you go with hardwood floors or tile floors, it's no more than $20,000. If you assume that labor should be equivalent to materials, then you're talking about 20,000 in materials, 20,000 in labor. And it should not take a month or 2 months to build a house. Digging the foundation should take no more than a day. Dropping the foundation should take no more than a day. Then you got to give it 3 days to cure. Dropping the floor joist should not take any more than 2 days. Once you have the floor joist, drop the floorboard, frame the walls. At most 3 days. Run the electrical plumbing at most 2 days. Hang the drywall, do the finishing touches. It should take no more than 2 weeks from digging the foundation to ready to move in. No more than 2 weeks. If you have someone build a house for you, do it fixed bid. Don't do it time and materials. Go to the general contractor and tell them, how much will it cost me to build this house in terms of materials and labor, and sign a contract with that price. That way, if there are any overruns, it's on them, not on you. Never, ever, ever do a build on time and materials. Ever. To give you an idea, when framing a wall, so inside your wall, behind the drywall, there are planks of wood, 2x4s, about this wide, probably that thick, usually 8 feet long. They cost about $3 a piece. You lay them every 16 inches. So that means within 48 inches, you've used about 3 or 4. So for a 4-foot wall span, expect to spend about no more than $10 on the wall studs. Drywall comes in 8 feet by 4 feet sheets. In residential construction, they stack them up, one wide sheet on top of another wide sheet. So if I have an 8-foot wall, I'm going to spend about $20 in wood studs, and then 2 sheets of drywall on this side, 2 sheets of drywall on that side. And that's about $10, $12 a sheet. So let's say $24 on this side, $24 on the other side. So 48 plus 10, $60 for an 8-foot wall. Just the wall itself. So take that basis for an 8-foot wall, materials should be $60, and then extrapolate it for your entire house. If you go with plumbing, go with PEX pipe. It's much easier to use, it's much quicker to deploy. PEX is cheap. 25 feet, I believe, is about $30. Now, 25 feet for a first floor bathroom, that should be sufficient to hit your sink, your shower, and your toilet. So if you have 3 bathrooms on the first floor, the supply plumbing should not cost you more than $100. The drain plumbing, you're talking about PVC. Once again, it depends on how long the runs are to the main stack. But just for 1 bathroom, drain plumbing should not cost you materials, should not cost you more than $20. Electrical. With electrical, if you go into your basement, you'll see this big panel. And out of that panel, they run wires. What happens with those wires is I'm going to run those wires from that panel through the walls. And if I have an upper floor, I'm going to run it through the floor to the second floor, then run it through the walls over there. So a 4,000 square foot house, honestly, I did not anticipate you would need more than about 500 feet of 14 gauge wire. You could price that out. More likely, maybe 200 feet. I'm just estimating on the top end. The floor is made of 2x6, I think it's 4x6 floor joists that are laid across. Then on top of those floor joists, and they're laid 12 inches apart, on top of them you have about 3/4 inch to 1 inch plywood that's hammered onto those floor joists. That plywood costs about $15 to $20 a sheet, and it's about 4 by 8 feet. So determine the square footage of your house and then divide that by 32. That should give you the number of floorboards that you need. The other big thing would be, I'm not too good at pricing concrete, but you cover the approximate costing for the walls, for the floor, for the electrical, for the plumbing, and then use those. If you're in doubt, look at the code for the city, and the code will break down what materials should be used and how those materials should be used. What I'm trying to advise you is that don't go to a general contractor blind. Go there well armed. If you've done your research and you've determined that to build this house should cost me no more than 20,000 materials, document it. I need these many studs. I need this much drywall. I need this much floorboard. So when you go to the GC and you present that to him and he comes back and says, oh, it should be 60,000 materials, say, how do you get that number? How do you get that number? Come to agreement on materials, come to agreement on labor, and establish a schedule with milestones. Within 4 days, the foundation should be done. Within 6 days, the first floor should be done. Within 9 days, the framing for the first floor should be done. And stick to that schedule. Impose penalties if he does not meet that schedule. If you choose to go into real estate development, that is the most profitable undertaking you could go into. I could go to LA and buy a half-acre piece of land for probably $100,000, $200,000. Let's say I spent $200,000. I could buy 20,000 in materials. Now, I could build a house on my own. You can't do that. So I could buy 20,000 materials, so I spent 220,000. It might take me 2 weeks to build this house. I might have to rent some bobcats and shit like that, forklifts. Let's just say 230,000. And I'll turn around after building a 5,000 square foot house in LA on a half-acre lot. I'll turn around and I will sell that house for at least 700,000 because that is a prevailing market value. Here in Columbus, Ohio, where I could get an acre of land for 40,000. Now that house cost me 60,000 to build. 5,000 square foot house on 1 acre of land. I'm going to sell that house for at least 200,000. That's $140,000 profit in a month. So if you decide to go into real estate development, true development, I recommend you gain an understanding of the building process. There are a lot of excellent videos out there on YouTube. There's this one white guy, I don't know his name, I don't know his channel. If I did, I'd give it to you. Tall white guy, skinny white guy. He knows his shit. He's probably middle age. If you could find his videos, he knows his shit. And he knows a lot of shit. There are a lot of others out there who put out excellent videos on construction. You're not going to do this yourself, but you want to understand what you're being charged for to ensure that you're not overcharged. Now, so we've spoken about buying a property below market and making improvements to it. building your own properties, and of course, commercial and residential. If you want to start your own business, I want to start a restaurant in LA, maybe in about 4 months from now. And this restaurant will be a black restaurant. Black people come from Africa, the Caribbean, South America, America. So I'll have 4 sections to this restaurant: a black American section, a black African section, a black Caribbean section, and a black South American section. Within these sections, I will serve food that's respective of that section, and I'll have music, live bands performing. So in the black American section, I might have a jazz band or a blues band or a rapper or an R&B singer or a gospel singer. In the black Caribbean section, I might have a reggae singer or a soca singer. In the black African section, I might have a suku singer or a traditional African dance performing. In the black Latin American singer, I might have a samba singer, a merengue, something like that. But what I want to do, I want to buy the land. If I could find maybe a 5-10 acre plot or even 5 acre zoned commercial, I'll buy that. The restaurant won't occupy more than about an acre of that land, so the other 4 acres I could develop and either rent out or do something else with it. The restaurant, I own that land and the land around it. So the income from that land augments the income from the restaurant. So if you're thinking about starting a small shop, maybe a little retail shop, consider getting a plot of land that's zoned commercial in the area that you want to operate, and then build your own shop. What does that do for you? If you decide to move your shop somewhere else, you own that property. And you can rent that property out. So real estate can actually augment your other investments. In actuality, the best scenario would be to create a portfolio. Have a few businesses, own a few properties, have some intellectual property, and then make some investments. Now you're making money from all sides. If this fails, you still have these other 3. You have now assured your financial future and the financial future of your children. To black people, too often you read about white people have 5 times, 10 times as wealth as black people. Why is that? The majority of white wealth comes from 2 sources: inheritance and ownership of property. If I'm a white man and I bought a house when I was 25 years old and I'm now 65, I'll probably pay that house off. That's now my net worth. When I die, my children inherit that house. If I have 2 children, that house is now worth $300,000. When I die, guess what? They automatically get $150,000 net worth. It may not be liquid, but it's a security that you could use to borrow. It's collateral. Black people, we don't do that. We don't buy houses. We don't invest in all of that. And that puts our kids at a disadvantage. So, so we start off from behind, and then we have our kids start off even further behind. White people start off ahead, and they have their kids start off ahead. We need to change that. We need to start thinking in terms of legacy. I'm living today. What life will my kids live? What will I leave for my kids? You don't have to have $1 million in your pocket right now to do this. You don't have to have $100,000 a year job. I could make $30,000 a year. And I could live broke as shit for 1 year. Cash a bus every day. Rent a room from someone. So between the bus and renting a room, I could spend about $600 a month. And I'm making $30,000 a year. $600 a month is what, $7,000. That means I'm saving $23,000 after my first year. During that period, during that year-long period, I'm cleaning up my credit, cleaning up my credit, cleaning up my credit. After that year, I have $23,000. The way mortgages work, you're allowed to borrow up to 3 times of your income. My income is $30,000. I could borrow up to $90,000. I'm putting $20,000 down. So I could buy a $110,000 property. I buy a duplex. Keep renting that little room for $100 a month. But now I own a duplex. And I'm renting that duplex out for $1,500 a month each side. So I'm making $3,000 a month. In 1 month, I am now making my income for doing nothing. I don't touch that money. After 1 year, it's grown to $36,000. I've made some investments in it. So now I probably have another 20, 30,000 equity in it. So now I have 66,000. I go to a bank. My credit is excellent. I go to a bank. I tell them, look, I got 66,000. I want to buy this apartment building. It's 200,000. It's got 6 units in it. So now at the end of my second year, I got a 6-unit apartment building and a 2-unit house. The 2-unit house is giving me 3,000. The 6-unit apartment building is probably giving me 5,000. I'm making $8,000 a month. I'm making $100,000 a year, or 96,000, and I keep investing. Within 5 years, it's very feasible that I'm making at least $300,000-400,000 a year. I don't need to work, and I did this starting off with a simple job that was paying me maybe $12, $15 an hour. You don't need money to make money. That's a huge misconception. You start off small. It could be 3 of us. We work at the same place. We each only make $30,000 a year. Let's do this. Instead of you getting an apartment and you pay $800 and I pay $800, I pay $800, let's all get a 2-bedroom apartment where we pay $600, $700 a month, $800 a month. Split that 3 ways. That's about $300 a month. And then let's each take, so we're making about $2,500 a month. We're paying $300 in rent. So that's $2,200 we're left with. Let's each take $1,500, put it in a pot. So every month we have $4,500 in a pot, 45, 45. After 4 months, we go buy a property. 4 months after that, we buy another property. 4 months, another property. You don't have to start big. Do your research. Understand your market. Have an idea, an objective, a goal, and run with it. Stay away from the losers. Stay the hell away from the losers. If I'm doing nothing with my life, if I'm lazy, if I'm narcissistic, if I'm full of myself, I don't want you to succeed. So I will do every fucking thing to make sure you fail. Stay away from the losers. As mentioned, I am working on a website. I will have that up by next week, and all of this information will be on that site at no cost to you. I'm not selling you a system. I'm not selling you shit. My goal, I'm tired of seeing black people poor. I'm tired of seeing rich black people poor. I'm tired of seeing professional athletes broke, professional musicians broke. If you're making $5 million a year playing a sport or making movies or making music, that $5 million, just your first salary, you could take that money, invest it wisely, let those investments continue to grow. By your third year playing, you're making more money from your properties than you are playing as an athlete. If something happens, who cares? I'm making 8 million out there and I'm making 5 million here. If I leave this, I got a better lifestyle out there. This country was made for the producers, not the consumers. Do not be a consumer. Be a producer. Once again, thank you. God bless and good night.